Hi, I'm Robert Paaswell. I'm a distinguished professor of civil engineering at the City College of New York. And today I'm going to talk about managing urban transportation systems. Urban transportation systems are complicated. We all know of urban traffic, trucks, cars, buses, everything in city streets. I'm going to concentrate on urban public transportation, which is the most complex and probably one of the most money consuming aspects of public transportation. I'm going to go through a quick overview of what urban modes are. Who owns the urban modes? Who owns public transportation systems? Who owns the streets? What are the roles of social contracts? We provide public transportation because we feel there's a public need for it. We want to know what creates that need and who's responsible for it. And then once we get into who owns it and the fact that it's public, we have to get into political issues. Public transportation is big business, and there are political interests involved in it. But let me start first with the job. Urban public transportation is very simple. The job is to meet the demand of the people who want to travel. And so the role of the public transit manager is to provide trips, or as we say in the public transportation jargon, we have to meet service. So the public transit manager every day gets up and gets a sheet on his or her desk that says, have I met service? Do I have enough vehicles and enough person power, bus operators, conductors, maintainers, to meet that service? And if I don't, why don't I? The service that you have is a function of urban demand. How many people want the service? What kinds of trips are they taking? Are they business trips, working trips? So where do they start? Where do they end? Where should I have my routes? How often should I put out the number of buses or rail cars or light rail cars that I need? So once you have a sense of demand, you then know the equipment that you need. When you know how often you have to provide that equipment, you know the number of drivers you have, and once you have all the equipment, you know everything else. Once you understand demand, which is the big outside figure, once you know where people are coming from and where they're going to and when they want to come and when they want to go and what you need for that, you pretty much know that you're going to have to establish funding to pay for that. And so you have to work on a couple of budgets, an operating budget and a capital budget. You need to understand that if you're going to provide service, you need to have the funds in order to provide that service. And finally, you're going to have a system of management to manage the system. I'll talk about that in a few minutes too, but you're going to have an overall chief, somebody that says this is the way we're going to operate service today, and you're going to have an organization that's designed to provide that service. You're going to have bus operators, you're going to have bus maintainers, you're going to have people to clean the stations, you're going to have people to buy the equipment, to plan the routes, to organize the system. So you find that transit organizations become very complex organizations where there's a lot of things to do in order to very simply have your bus at your bus stop when you want it in the morning. In the United States, we have different kinds of ownership models, but the primary ownership model in the United States is a public authority. And a public authority is a unit of state government usually that operates like a corporation. It's got a board of directors or a board of managers that's usually appointed by a public official or a set of public officials. In some cases might be elected by the population. And their job is to set the oversight and operating conditions of the organization and to basically hire the general manager, the person that's going to manage all the operations, and then the general manager's job is to provide the service. And reporting to the board are what we call operating units. For example, in New York City, we have the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, which is like a holding company in a sense. It sets the rules, it negotiates the budget, it sets the hours of operation, the fare policy, and everything else. But the New York City Transit provides the buses and rail cars and the whole the whole personnel system to maintain that, to provide the service. One of the reasons that you have an oversight body is the public demands accountability for its public transportation systems. It wants to make sure that whoever is operating the public transit does it with the public in mind and is not, in a sense, taking advantage of the public, but is meeting the public demand for service at times and places that they want. Contracting out for service, something that's done in Europe and something that we're beginning to look at the United States, has come later, but you recognize that when you're contracting out for service, the person who's providing the service is looking for a profit. If it's a private sector business, they need a profit. The public sector, there is no profit, but there are pluses and minuses on both sides. Public transportation has always been considered a public good, but the amount that the public pays for that public good is depending on the politics of the region. In the European Union, the general feeling is that the public should pay the full and true operating costs of the service, not the capital costs, not the cost to build the system, but the true operating costs. In the United States, the fares are set at politically acceptable levels that the politicians, the people who control the system, whether it's a governor or a mayor or some local unit of government, feels that it's a reasonable fare for someone to pay so that they can get to work, they can get to the hospital. If they're seniors, they can carry out activities without any kind of hindrance. And as a result, the fares in the United States only reach about 30 to 50% of the operating costs. So operating costs in the United States have to be subsidized. Public transportation is inherently a political entity. It's up to the local managers of the public transit system to convince the funding agencies, the people who are going to provide the subsidies, that these are necessary for the levels of service, that everything is priced right, the oversight is in place, you're buying things, you're bidding packages, everything is within reason, will work well, and you can only meet the demand if you get the subsidy to complete the subsidy plus the fares and meet the total operating needs.